My parents always told me, "You'll never be as smart as your brother." Well, when the bills came due, I told them, "Then ask him to pay." Stay with me till the end of this story, and if it moves you, I'd be grateful if you shared it with others, dropped a like, and subscribed for more stories like this. My name is Naomi Hill. I'm 26 years old, and for most of my life I've lived in the shadow of my older brother, Caleb. He's the one my parents, Evelyn and Terrence, brag about. He's the one with the framed diplomas, the expensive suits, the fancy job in finance. Whenever we sat at the dinner table, I was reminded that Caleb was the smart one, the child who would carry the Hill name with pride. And me? I was just the daughter who worked at a hair salon, good with her hands, but apparently not good enough for their respect. It wasn't like I didn't try. I went to community college, balancing classes at night while working during the day. I learned the art of braiding and styling hair, making people feel beautiful. That gave me pride. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for them. My mom would sigh, "Naomi, you should have aimed higher. Why can't you be like Caleb?" My dad would shake his head whenever I talked about opening my own salon one day. To them, it wasn't a real dream. I still remember one Christmas when I gave my mom a hairstyle I'd practiced for weeks, a soft twist she had admired on someone at church. She smiled politely but then turned to Caleb, saying, "Your brother just got a promotion. Isn't that wonderful?" My gift was forgotten in seconds. That was my life, Caleb shining, me fading into the background. Caleb didn't make it easier. He carried himself like he was above me, calling me little stylist whenever I shared anything about my work or my classes. To him, I was just playing around while he was building a real future. He wore his success like a crown, and my parents worshipped at his feet. But I wasn't weak. The constant comparisons, the dismissal, the favoritism, it hurt, but it also made me stronger. I learned to carry my pain quietly, to channel it into every braid, every twist, every cut I gave at the salon. Each client who walked out smiling reminded me that I mattered, even if my own family couldn't see it. Still, when you grow up always being told you're less than, the words sink deep. At night, I'd sit in my small apartment and wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't smart. Maybe I'd never be enough. But something inside me refused to fully believe that. I kept pushing, even when no one cheered for me. That's the part of the story most people never see. The years of quiet endurance. The nights of doubt. The weight of being invisible in your own family. I carried it all, until the day came when everything shifted. The day I finally realized I didn't have to play the role of the forgotten daughter anymore. When I think back to my school years, the picture is always the same. Caleb's report cards were framed on the living room wall, polished in glass like they were priceless works of art. Mine? They were tucked into drawers or left lying on the counter until someone eventually threw them away. I remember once getting a B+ in math after struggling all semester. I came home proud, smiling, ready to show them. My dad barely looked before saying, "Well, Caleb got straight A's at your age." That one sentence crushed whatever excitement I had carried through the door. It wasn't just grades. Caleb's science fair projects were displayed for weeks. Teachers praised him, and my parents made sure everyone at church knew their son was destined for big things. I loved to draw and paint, pouring hours into little sketches. Once, I taped a drawing of a woman with flowing braids to the fridge. The next morning it was gone, tossed into the trash. When I asked, my mom simply said, "Sweetie, focus on your schoolwork. You can't get anywhere with doodles." I never forgot the sting of that. Money was another wound. My parents scraped and saved to send Caleb to a private university. They proudly paid for his tuition, his books, even his apartment. When I mentioned wanting to go to beauty school, they laughed. "That's not real college, Naomi," my mom said, shaking her head. "You need a real degree." My dad added, "You're smart enough to work at a salon, but don't waste our money. Do something practical." The message was clear. Caleb was worth investing in. I was not. Caleb soaked in all the attention. He strutted around the house like a prince, polished and smug, always ready with a smirk. Anytime I dared to talk about my dreams, opening a salon, running my own business, he cut me down with 2 words. "Little stylist." He said it with a chuckle, like my goals were a joke. At first, I'd argue back, but after a while I stopped. The words stayed, though, sharp and heavy, reminding me of where I stood. That was the rhythm of our family. Caleb, the golden child, shining bright in everyone's eyes. Naomi, the afterthought, the one with hobbies instead of talents, dreams instead of plans. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need their approval. And in a way, I grew tough from it. I learned to hold myself up, to find pride in the small victories no one else noticed. But deep down, I carried envy. I carried the hurt of being invisible, of knowing that no matter what I did, I would never be enough in their eyes. That's how the lines were drawn. Caleb, the success story they celebrated, and me, the shadow they ignored. It shaped everything that came after. It started with a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I had just finished a long shift at the salon and dragged myself there because, well, that's what I always did. The smell of roast chicken filled the kitchen, laughter carried from the dining room, and for a moment I thought maybe this time would be different. But it wasn't. Halfway through the meal, my mom cleared her throat and smiled sweetly at me. "Naomi, your brother and Jasmine are planning their engagement party. We want it to be special. You know how much family means to us." My dad nodded, his fork clinking against his plate. "And we figured you could help out with some of the costs. It won't be too much." I froze. Rent was due next week. My textbooks for class were still unpaid. My fridge held little more than eggs and leftovers. They knew I was barely scraping by, but here they were, asking me to chip in for Caleb's big celebration. "I don't think I can," I began, but my mother cut me off. "Family comes first, Naomi. Caleb has always been there for you. This is your chance to show him support." Her voice carried that edge, the one that made saying no feel like betrayal. Then Caleb leaned back in his chair, adjusting the cuff of his designer shirt, and smirked. "Thanks in advance, sis. Jasmine and I really appreciate it." He hadn't even waited for me to agree. In his mind, it was already settled. The room spun with anger. My hands shook as I set down my fork. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like the family wallet's spare change boiled over. I looked straight at Caleb, then at my parents. "Why don't you ask your genius son to pay for it?" My voice was sharp, louder than I expected. "I'm not the one swimming in cash, remember? He's the one you're always bragging about. Let him handle it." The table fell silent. My father's face hardened. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Caleb's smug smile faltered for the first time, but only for a second before he scoffed and shook his head. "You're selfish, Naomi," my mother snapped. "Always jealous of your brother. Why can't you just be happy for him?" "Jealous?" I laughed bitterly. "Of what? Of being treated like I don't matter? Of watching you pour everything into him while I struggle on my own?" My eyes burned, but I refused to cry in front of them. My father slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough. We raised you better than this. Stop acting like a child." But I didn't back down. For the first time, I let the anger sit in my chest without swallowing it. I knew then I couldn't keep playing their doormat, couldn't keep letting them use me while praising Caleb. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I was done. I remember the day clear as glass. I had walked into the dealership, nervous but excited, ready to finally get a reliable car of my own. I'd been saving for months, every tip and every extra shift tucked away. The salesman smiled, told me it shouldn't be a problem. But when he came back with the paperwork, his expression had changed. "I'm sorry, Miss Hill," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "We can't approve the loan. Your credit score is too low." I blinked, confused. My bills were always paid on time. I didn't even have a credit card balance. My score should have been fine. "That doesn't make sense," I murmured, my stomach nodding. Later that night, I pulled my credit report. That's when I saw it. A huge loan, tens of thousands of dollars, attached to my name. And the co-signer? My parents. My own parents had signed off using my credit without even asking me. The loan had Caleb's fingerprints all over it. My chest tightened, rage and disbelief colliding. I drove straight to their house the next evening. The words spilled out before I even sat down. "Did you take out a loan in my name?" "For Caleb's house." My mom barely flinched. She kept stirring the pot on the stove, as if I had asked her about the weather. "Yes, we helped Caleb get approved. He needed a co-signer. It's no big deal." "No big deal?" My voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what this did to me? I got denied for a car loan today. My credit is ruined." She turned and gave me that dismissive smile, the one I hated more than any insult. "Caleb always pays his debts, Naomi. You should be proud to help your brother. He's building a life. Family sacrifices for each other." My hands shook as I looked from her to my dad, who sat in his chair with the TV remote in hand, not even meeting my eyes. "You didn't even ask me," I whispered. "You stole from me." Just then, Caleb strolled in, tie loosened from work, grinning like he owned the world. Oh, that? Come on, Naomi. It's just a small favor. Don't act like it's the end of the world. You'll survive. His laugh echoed in my ears, mocking and sharp. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was theft. They had taken my name, my future, and handed it to him like it was nothing. My own family had used me like a spare key, opening doors for Caleb while locking me out. I stood there, heat rushing through me, and realized something I could never unsee. In their eyes, my worth wasn't my own. It was whatever they could take from me to make Caleb's life easier. And I swore to myself, right then, I wouldn't let them get away with it again. After the betrayal with the loan, something in me shut down. I stopped answering my parents' calls unless I absolutely had to. I visited less and less, until the only time they saw me was at holidays when I couldn't come up with an excuse fast enough. Distance gave me air to breathe. It gave me room to focus on the one thing that mattered, building a life of my own. At the salon, I poured myself into work. Every braid, every twist, every careful parting of hair became a little act of rebellion, a way of proving I was worth more than they ever gave me credit for. Ms. Lorraine, the owner, noticed. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a kind heart, and she had been running that salon for decades. One night after closing, she locked up, turned to me and said, "Naomi, you've got a gift. Don't waste it working under someone else your whole life. Learn the business. You could run your own place one day." Her words sank deep. No one in my family had ever spoken to me like that, like I was capable of something more. With her encouragement, I signed up for night classes in cosmetology management. It wasn't easy. I'd work all day, grab a quick bite, and head straight to class. By the time I got home, it was past 10, and I'd collapse on my couch with my notes still in my lap. But I didn't mind the exhaustion. For the first time, I could see a future that belonged to me. The loan had wrecked my credit, so financing anything big was out of reach. Still, I saved what I could. Every tip went into an envelope tucked in my dresser drawer. It wasn't much, but it was steady, and it was mine. Some nights I'd count the bills and whisper to myself, "One day, this will be my shop. My name on the sign. My rules inside the doors." Word about my work spread through the neighborhood. Mothers brought their daughters. Women stopped me at the grocery store to ask for appointments. And even strangers on the bus complimented my braids. I built a reputation, not because anyone handed me an opportunity, but because I earned it with my own two hands. Meanwhile, Caleb lived like money grew on trees. He bought luxury clothes every other week, posted pictures of his brand new car on social media, and jetted off on trips with his fiancée to places I couldn't even dream of affording. Every time I saw one of his flashy photos, I reminded myself not to compare. Let him flaunt his world. I was building mine from the ground up, brick by brick, braid by braid. And though my progress was quiet, it was steady. Each day I stood behind that chair, I felt something growing inside me. Strength, pride, and the certainty that I didn't need their approval anymore. I was finally becoming my own person. The first call came on a Tuesday morning. I was setting up my station at the salon when my phone buzzed. A strange number lit up the screen. I answered, and a clipped voice on the other end asked for me by full name. "This is about the loan," the man said. "The payments are overdue. You're listed on the paperwork. We expect you to take responsibility." My heart sank, but I forced my voice to stay steady. "You'll have to talk to Caleb Hill. It's his house, his loan. I'm not paying for something I never agreed to." I hung up before he could argue. My hands shook as I tucked my phone back into my apron, but beneath the fear, a stubborn fire burned. I wasn't going to carry Caleb's mistakes. The calls didn't stop. Every week, sometimes twice in one day, different voices repeated the same threats. Late fees, damaged credit, legal action. Each time I gave the same answer. "Go ask Caleb. It's his debt." Saying it out loud made me stronger. Then one evening, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, my parents stood there, both looking more nervous than I'd seen in years. My mom's smile was forced, her hands wringing together. My dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Naomi," my mom began, "your brother is going through a hard time. He's missed a couple of payments, but you know Caleb. He always bounces back. If you could just cover this month, just this once, it would give him time to get back on his feet." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Just this once? That's what you said when you signed my name on a loan I never agreed to. Do you know how many times the creditors call me? Do you care what this is doing to me?" My dad finally looked up, his face stern. "Family helps each other. Caleb would do the same for you. No, he wouldn't, I shot back. He never has. And neither have you. They stood frozen, as if they didn't recognize me anymore. I could see the shock in my mother's eyes, like she expected me to fold the way I always had. But I didn't. I straightened my shoulders, met both their stares, and said coldly, I'm not as smart as him, right? That's what you've told me my whole life. Then let him figure it out. He's the genius. Let him use that big brain to solve his own problems. Silence filled the doorway. My mom opened her mouth, but no words came. My dad muttered something under his breath, and then they turned to leave. I closed the door behind them, my chest heaving. For the first time, I hadn't just defended myself, I had drawn a line. And I wasn't going to step back over it. Caleb's golden image was starting to crack, and I wasn't about to patch it for him. It didn't take long for the shine to wear off Caleb's perfect life. The first sign came when I drove past his neighborhood and noticed a bright orange foreclosure notice taped to his front door. The house he had bragged about, the one my parents praised like it was proof of his brilliance, was slipping out of his hands. Not long after, I saw his car being hauled onto a tow truck. That sleek, black luxury car he used to park diagonally just so everyone would notice, it was gone. Word spread fast too. Clients at the salon whispered that Caleb's company had started to question his expenses, that people at his office were talking about his careless money habits. The golden boy was cracking, and everyone could see it. For a while I stayed quiet. It wasn't my business, and honestly, I didn't want it to be. But my parents couldn't accept what was happening. They showed up at my place again, this time desperate. My mom's voice was high and frantic. Naomi, your brother is losing everything. Do you understand? He's about to lose his job, his home, his reputation. If you were a real sister, you'd help him. My father chimed in, anger laced in his tone. You've always been selfish. Family steps up in times like this. Caleb needs you, and you're turning your back. I looked at them, standing there like I was the one who'd caused all of this. For years they had told me I wasn't smart enough, wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't worth investing in. And now, when their star child was drowning, they suddenly expected me to save him? The bitterness rose in my chest like a wave. I let out a laugh, sharp and cold. Help him? You mean the sister who's never been enough for you? The one you tossed aside so Caleb could shine? Now I'm supposed to fix what he broke. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father shook his head in disgust. But I didn't flinch. I was done shrinking under their disappointment. You made him the golden child, I continued, my voice steady. You gave him everything, and he wasted it. That's not on me. That's on you. And I'm not cleaning up his mess. The silence between us was heavy, years of resentment pressed into that single moment. My parents stared at me like they couldn't recognize the daughter they raised. But the truth was, they had never really seen me at all. That night, after they left, I made a decision. No more phone calls. No more dinners. No more letting their voices control my worth. I wasn't just distancing myself this time. I was severing the tie completely. Caleb's world was collapsing, and they wanted me to be the glue. But I had finally learned. I wasn't their backup plan, their safety net, or their shadow. I was Naomi, and I was walking away for good. After cutting ties with my parents, I turned all my energy toward myself. I started small, renting a single chair in a neighborhood salon. It wasn't glamorous. My corner barely had enough room for my supplies, but it was mine. Clients began to trickle in, and before long, word spread that Naomi Hill could braid, twist, and style hair like nobody else. Women left my chair smiling, running their hands over fresh styles that made them feel beautiful. That kind of reputation couldn't be bought, and it grew faster than I imagined. Every dollar I made, I saved. I didn't buy new clothes or flashy things. I packed my lunch, walked to work when I could, and tucked money away in a separate envelope marked my shop. Slowly, that envelope grew thicker. I watched it pile up with a kind of joy I'd never felt before, because every bill inside represented my own effort. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody could take the credit. Meanwhile, Caleb's life unraveled like a thread pulled too far. I heard through the grapevine that he had moved into a smaller apartment after the foreclosure. His fiancée, Jasmine, broke off their engagement. The car, the vacations, the expensive dinners, all of it disappeared. I didn't need to lift a finger to bring him down. His downfall played out in real time, piece by piece, and I wasn't involved. Sometimes, I'd get updates through whispers at church or clients gossiping in my chair. Did you hear about Caleb Hill? He lost that big job of his. I would nod politely, never adding anything. Inside, though, there was a strange satisfaction. For years, my parents' favoritism had been like armor around him, shielding him from responsibility. But that same shield was the reason he had no idea how to stand on his own. The favoritism that built him up was now tearing him apart. My revenge didn't come from plotting or schemes. It came from silence, from the refusal to save him when the world stopped treating him like royalty. I didn't return the creditor's calls. I didn't rush to his side when his life crumbled. I simply focused on my own growth, and every step forward I took felt like a quiet victory. Eventually, I saved enough to rent my own little space. Not just a chair anymore, but an actual shop with my name on the lease. Loyal clients followed me there, and soon the place buzzed with laughter, music, and the sound of hair dryers. When I turned the key in the lock each morning, I felt a pride I'd never known. I hadn't screamed, I hadn't plotted, I hadn't destroyed anyone. My revenge was simple. I lived, I built, and I thrived. And as Caleb sank deeper into the mess he had created, I stood taller, knowing I had finally won without ever lifting a finger. It was a rainy afternoon when I heard the knock on my shop door. We were closed for the day, but I had stayed late sweeping hair and tidying up. At first, I thought it might be a client who forgot their appointment time. But when I opened the door, it was Caleb. He didn't look like the polished, confident man I grew up with. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and his eyes carried heavy shadows, as though he hadn't slept in days. For a moment, I just stared, barely recognizing him. This was the brother who used to strut into family gatherings like he owned the room. Now he looked small. "Naomi," he said quietly, glancing around as if embarrassed to be there. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, but stepped aside. He walked in, shoving his hands in his pockets, pacing across the floor. Finally, he blurted out, "I need help. I'm behind on rent, my bills are piling up, and I don't know where else to turn." Hearing those words from him was surreal. This was the same brother who once laughed at my dreams, who called me little stylist, like I was beneath him. And now he was standing in my shop, asking for money. He sat down in one of the chairs, his voice breaking as he continued. "You've done well for yourself. I can see that. You've got clients, your own place. Please, Naomi, just lend me something to get back on my feet." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him squirm. For years, I had imagined moments like this, when the roles would reverse. But I didn't feel joy or triumph. What I felt was clarity. I took a slow breath and said the words that had haunted me my whole life. "Caleb, you'll figure it out. You're the smart one, remember?" His head snapped up, his face tightening. "Are you serious? You're really going to throw that back at me now?" I met his glare without flinching. All those years, that's what I heard. Every struggle I faced, Mom and Dad reminded me you were the genius, the one destined for success. So now's your chance to prove it. Figure it out. The silence stretched heavy between us. His jaw clenched, his eyes filled with frustration, and for the first time, I saw how fragile he really was without the safety net of our parents' favoritism. He stood abruptly, knocking the chair back with a scrape. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood alone in my shop, the echo of his footsteps fading into the rain. The balance had shifted completely. I was no longer the sister left in the shadows, begging for scraps of approval. Caleb had come to me broken, and I had sent him away with nothing but the truth. For the first time in my life, I held the power. The call came late in the evening, just as I was finishing up with a client. My phone buzzed on the counter, and when I saw the name Mom, I almost didn't answer. But some habits are hard to break. I swiped the screen and pressed it to my ear. Her voice trembled, softer than I'd ever heard. "Naomi, your father and I, we're in trouble. The bank is threatening to take the house. We just need a little help to get through." For a moment, I said nothing. Memories of all the times they told me I wasn't enough washed over me like a tide. I thought about the loan they'd put in my name without asking, about the years I worked twice as hard just to prove I mattered. I took a breath and spoke calmly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't help you." There was a long silence, broken only by her quiet sniffle. Then she said, almost pleading, "You'd really turn your back on your own family?" I closed my eyes. "No, Mom. You turned your back on me a long time ago. I'm just finally learning to live with it." And then I ended the call. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilt. For once, I felt peace. Months passed, and the calls came again and again. Sometimes from Mom, sometimes from Dad. Each one a different variation of the same request. "Naomi, just this once. Naomi, you're doing well. Can't you spare a little? And every time, my answer stayed the same. Meanwhile, my own life bloomed. The small chair I once rented had grown into a full salon with bright mirrors, polished floors, and the hum of dryers filling the air. Clients booked weeks in advance, and people in the community recommended me by name. I trained younger stylists, teaching them the skills I once thought were less than. I saw in their eyes what I had once needed myself, belief. On Friday nights, when the last customer left and the lights dimmed, I often paused to look around at what I had built. Every corner of the shop carried a piece of me. The hours I worked, the doubts I overcame, the dreams I refused to let die. One evening, after locking the door and pulling down the shutters, I stood on the quiet street. The cool night breeze brushed against my face, and I whispered into the stillness, almost as if speaking to the ghosts of my past. Guess I wasn't so dumb after all. The words didn't carry bitterness. They carried freedom. For the first time in my life, I no longer sought their approval, no longer needed to prove myself in their eyes. I had carved my own path, built my own life, and no one could take that away. I walked away from the shop with my head high, the keys jingling in my hand, and peace in my heart. I was finally truly free. Do you believe Naomi made the right choice by cutting ties and standing on her own? Or should she have given her parents another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really like to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy stories like this, remember to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you're always updated when a new one comes out.